Hello, dear. It's Heather, and you are watching Save Today with Heather J. I am somebody who has spent her entire adult life living paycheck to paycheck and being one life event away from financial crisis. I really struggle a little bit with some of my intros and end up doing a lot of starts and stops because I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again, and I don't have a lot to add each time. So today I'm just going to get straight into today's video. Today's video is my debt overview, what I like to call my debts and desires, what a lot of other channels will call their debt confession. I am just going to go over some of the big debts that I need to be paying off and some of the big purchases I'd like to be able to start bringing in. My desires haven't changed much. In fact, they haven't changed at all. This from June, from May. So I'm not going to focus a whole lot on the desires for this particular video. If you are interested in that, go back and check May's Debts and Desires debt overview video, and you can see what those are. But my debts, when I started this journey, this most recent journey, I knew that I didn't have all of the possible debt gathered up. I'm somebody who has, again, spent a lifetime ignoring all of that. I'm barely getting by month paycheck to paycheck, so there certainly isn't anything extra for those unexpected events. So I knew as I gathered up and prepared for my original budget in May that likely there was going to be some things that I was not aware of that were going to be trickling in. And that definitely happened this month. This month has been very hard for me. It's been very challenging on so many levels. Some of that was because it's a 3 paycheck month, and having that be my second month, I really wasn't grasping how to, I didn't have a strong grasp on how to create a regular budget. Then to change it into a 3 paycheck budget was throwing a monkey in the wrench. Added to that was the fact that I'm trying to get my belongings shipped to me from out of state in those U-Haul boxes, which was dependent on getting my taxes in time. I'll go over that a little bit more as I go over my month closeout, but that did not happen this month. My taxes had not yet shown up when I was setting up June's budget, and I had filed them all in like April sometime, mid to late April, so I fully expected them to show up by mid-June, and that did not happen. And I knew that based on the amount that my taxes were, I was going to need to add some of my own income into that. And so I had kind of played with what taking $1,000 out of my income would look like, but I didn't budget that out on paper because that was so dependent on so many things falling into place, and they didn't fall into place. But a lot of other things happened this month. Those life events I talk about at the beginning of each of my videos, I'm neck deep in them right now, and there's a lot of things kind of going on behind the scenes that came up, not completely unexpectedly, but fairly unexpectedly, and that has impacted a lot of things, and it has impacted some of what's happening in my Debts and Desires video, and it's going to impact some of what happens with my paycheck number 3 closeout, as well as my monthly closeout, and that will come up again in those videos. And the reason I mention that is because my very first thing I have on my debt is getting my U-Haul boxes shipped to me. I still have that on here. That still did not happen. That's $2,667. And then the second thing is something that showed up out of nowhere, and I have to tell you, these first 2 things have me very discouraged, and just very discouraged. At one point, I was very near to tears when I found out this second thing snuck in out of nowhere. I've mentioned several times that I had 2 credit cards that, because of life events from a year ago, I had maxed out those 2 credit cards and was in a payoff plan for those. The first credit card, I had made a payoff arrangement, and that was going to be 3 very large payments, and it was essentially half of the bill, and they were going to write the rest off. And so that is what I did, and that was over in, I think February, February. And then I just had the one that I was focused on, and in June that one was going to be paid off. Well, I had been getting, this is such a long twisted tale, I'm sorry, hang along with me as I just explain what's going on. I had been getting calls almost daily that I was quite convinced were a scammer. And I don't answer those calls. I let them go straight to voicemail. And every day, like Monday through Friday for probably 6 weeks, it was, this is so-and-so from Bank of America. We are calling about, I don't even remember how they phrased it, but you have choices and we want to reach out to you. Well, I knew I had paid that off. So that wasn't a legitimate call. That was some very persistent scammers calling and trying to get my information. Now, when I tell you I have a tendency to ignore those calls, I really ignore them, and those will go to voicemail, and they'll sit in voicemail for weeks, and then I'll go through and I'll listen to my voicemail, and I had like, I don't know, 21 calls I was listening to, and I realized it's the same 3 or 4 voices over and over and over again. And I started to question whether that was really scammers or really somebody from the bank. And I didn't understand why anyone from the bank would be calling. My credit card was paid off. My other accounts were in good standing. Why would they be calling me to try and say, you know, we have some choices, we'd like to work with you? Well, I finally got around to calling the bank directly on, I don't know, this last Friday, I think. Today's Tuesday. And I called, and at first the lady on the phone was like, oh no, that's a scammer, we wouldn't be calling for that. And then I explained, well, these calls did seem to start coming very shortly after I had paid off my credit card. And then she was like, oh, hold on, now that I have more information, let me transfer you through to the credit card department, and they can let you know if they've been calling. And I'm still like, obviously they haven't, that's paid off. Well, I get through to somebody, and they had been trying to call, and that first credit card had not been paid off. And I'm sorry, well, I'm going to get a little choked up here because I was so frustrated to hear that. Apparently, when you set up a payment plan and they tell you it's going to come out of a certain account, what happened was in January, I asked if they could take that money out of my other account because the account that I had set up for them to draw on wasn't going to have that payment. And I think I also asked them to take it out the following, like 4 days later. And they said that's fine. And they did that. But apparently that was changing my contractual agreement, which made that contract null and void. So while I thought I was paid off in February, that account was not paid off and was now getting late charges and has since been sent to a creditor because I took too long to reach out to them and make other arrangements. So now the account I thought was paid off, I owe $1,273 on, and I have to start paying that in July. And so when I say one life event away from financial crisis, these are the life events that happen. And so now I've entered into another payment agreement to get that paid off. And that's fine. That's my bad debt, and I'm willing to pay it. I did feel really guilty initially when they gave me a payoff plan that only paid off part of what I owed. So on the one hand, I'm very much okay with paying what is 100% my debt. But it's very frustrating to find out that I have such a huge step backwards. And I really thought that was all done with. The next thing I have on my debts is this $50 to Banner Health. This was a COVID test that my insurance didn't pay for. My work needed a second COVID test to come back negative in order for me to go back to work. But the insurance company wasn't paying for a second test 10 days after the first. So I owe that $50. This here is a new one that snuck in, I was not aware of. And this is a credit company called AR Strat. I have a CPAP machine that I sleep with at night. And my insurance pays for X amount. And I had gotten some supplies from them. And they could not give me the total so I could pay the money at the time I was ordering it. They needed to wait for the insurance to pay for that, or the insurance, and then I would get my copay amount. And so that took them quite a while to get that back to me. And of course, by then, because my life is paycheck to paycheck and so very little, I didn't have that extra money. I thought I had paid that off, but apparently I still owed them the $41.66. So that has been sent to collections. Collections has reached out to me, and I owe them $41.66. This AR Strat is not the company that I bought the supplies from originally. I still have those toll roads for the $198.85. This was getting to and from IKEA and to and from airports. I tried very hard to avoid the toll roads once I became aware that they existed, but every time I got almost to where I was going while I was deep in traffic, the Google Maps would reroute me into what was a toll road. And so I ended up not paying them because I was really angry that I felt like the airport was being held hostage, that I was being forced to use toll roads, and I didn't think that that was right. So I got very into my feelings. I didn't pay that. What was originally $45 is now $100 or $200. So that I still have to pay. I have this old rent for $709 even, and I have mentioned that this isn't completely old rent. What this is some cleanup. Every time you move out of a place, they find all kinds of ways to not give you back your deposit and to charge you things. And I'm somebody who doesn't put holes in the walls. I don't paint things. They always charge. So that's what this $709 is. When I did this in May, I thought that this was going to be one of my priorities. I wanted to get that paid for before it became a problem. And I knew I was pushing the timeline on that. This has since gotten reported to my on my credit report, and so I'm less driven to get that paid off. Does that mean I'm not going to pay it off? No, that does not mean I'm not going to pay it off, because I will. I need it off my credit report, but its priority has moved down. Some of these other things have greater priority than that at this point. Additionally, I thought between paying off my first credit card and getting my U-Haul out of there, I was going to have an extra $500 in my income to be making some of these payments, and that's not what has happened yet. So that had to take a step back. And then I discussed in May that I have 2 student loans. One is for $4,500, and that one didn't get any interest on it until after I'm out of school. And I think that you have to be out of school for, 6 months or a year and a half before those payments start. And then we had all of those freezes. So I haven't needed to make any payments on that. Obviously, that looks like that's going to be ending very quickly, and I want to make that be a priority. And so this may have to jump in front of some of this other stuff, because those interest rates as we all know, are going to take me under fast if I don't make that a high priority. And then I do have this student loan number 2. This is one that earns interest from the moment you get it. And of course, that's compounding. So this $481 is all the interest it has earned so far. Again, those interest froze during the everything that had been going on, and that looks like it's stopping. So that will be showing up again. So I have a total of $11,921.21 in debt. I do want to continue to address, because I have 2 other life events that have come up fairly unexpectedly in this month that has prevented some of these other things. One is a car repair bill, which we knew was coming. The whole reason we're sharing one vehicle is because the other vehicle has some work that needs to be done, and it had just been parked for a period of time while we figured out what, if anything, we were going to do about getting that car fixed. So the decision was made to make the car repair a priority and send it in and find out what was wrong with it and how much it was going to cost and get all of the things. Because what has happened is we'll fix one thing and very quickly a second thing will come up, and very quickly another thing will come up. Meanwhile, there's this underlying issue that we've been wanting to deal with the entire time we've had it, and we can't get to that because it's fairly large thing. Anyway, took it in, got the evaluation, all said and told, $3,440. That happened. And so that has taken every spare dollar out of 2 separate incomes. And so some of the money that I thought was going to be going to my U-Haul has temporarily been moved over to deal with that car and will come back. It's $1,000 that has left my income, and it's going to bounce back and forth in and out of my income as it deals with some of these other things that are coming up before it finally comes back to get to this U-Haul where it was originally intended to be anyway. Now, we didn't make the decision to take care of the car over the U-Haul. The U-Haul wasn't happening because the taxes weren't happening, and so I had the money to shift and bring back when the U-Haul can happen. Also, what's the other thing that has happened? The other thing that has happened that came out of nowhere was there is a surgery that needs to take place in the month of July. And in order for that surgery, the co-payment on that is $2,000, and $1,000 has to be paid before the surgery, and $1,000 has to happen after the surgery. I'm not going to get into a whole lot more details about what that is because, you know, privacy issues and all of that stuff. It's irrelevant, except that that was $1,000 that also had to come out unexpectedly. So I had 3 extremely large life events happen in this budget, in addition to getting kicked in the teeth with his credit card. So this has been such a challenging month with debts and getting things paid off and having that money. And was not looking forward to going over this with everybody. Because I'm not looking forward to going over it with myself. It's giving me such an incredible headache every time I sit down to go over these numbers. And it's very, very easy to just go, to heck with it, and toss it to the side and put my head in the sand and just wait for this to all blow over. Obviously, that hasn't gotten me very far. I have to deal with this. I have to look at the headaches. I have to come back over and over and over again, or I will just get further and further away. So that's where I'm at. I have my total debt has gone up by nearly $1,000. Let's see, where was I in May? 10,700, 11,900. So yeah, it's gone up by $1,500. So instead of going down, I really thought it was going to go down by about $3,000, 2,800. It has instead gone up. As far as the U-Haul boxes going and waiting on tax returns, only 1 or 2 of them had shown up in June in the time frame that I would have liked to have had my stuff shipped to me. I still, as of today, again, this is the very end of June, I still have 2 tax returns I'm waiting for. One is showing that it is in the mail on its way, and the other one has not finished processing. And the one that has not finished processing is the one I kept having to go to Staples and get my paperwork for. So I do have the majority of what I can expect for that in checks in my hand waiting to be cashed. And I will not cash them until I'm ready to get this, because if I cash them, I will spend them. And I know that about myself. I'm not even going to take that chance. I have to have the money to get those here. There's just no way around it. And then as far as my desires go, nothing has changed there. I still have this. I'm going to go ahead and take that off. I still have this Sweet 16 handy quilter that I've been wanting for years. That's about $6,495. I still would like to buy my own U-Haul box truck to have that for all of the reasons I mentioned in May. I still want a steam juicer at $150. I still want a green bean Frencher. It's only $20. I might, sneak that into my budget at some point, but it hasn't happened yet. It's such a niche thing that it's just not important at this time. I still need to get my hair cut and colored, which I estimate will probably be about $150, in part because it has been so long since I've had it done. There's going to be more work than if I was going every 6 weeks. And in part because I am not going to go to, I don't even know the name of some of those cheap places, but I'm not going to go to a cheap haircut. I'm going to go to a quality place and really make that a priority. I still need some pants, and that need is getting greater and greater. I'm down to 3 pairs of pants. 2 of them have already starting to wear holes in the thigh, and it's just getting to a crisis point at this point. So that is likely going to force its way very soon into my budget. And then I just want this 3-way mirror to make apparel sewing easier for myself when I can get to that. And so I don't have any estimates in my pants or the mirror because I haven't researched those, and that's something that can fluctuate so wildly based on where I'm purchasing it from, and I don't have any places or patterns or styles picked out that I'm really specific to, so there's no prices there. So my list of desires is $12,010 of what I would like to be able to purchase for myself to have as some kind of high ticket items. Then the next thing I've decided to go over here in my debts and desires, my debt overview, is just my credit score. And that's mostly because I want to watch what's happening with that. And when I discussed it in May, I was really struggling over what those numbers were and what they meant and what the categories were called. So I did write that over here, what the credit ranges are: poor, fair, good, very good, and excellent, and what the numbers are within that. So as of April 2020, which was just a year ago, which is as far back as the graph line went, I was at that point, I was 582 was my credit score, which if we look here is just barely fair, just barely out of poor. My lowest point within that graph line was in September of 2022 at 490, which was very deep in poor. And then I actually made an error here. This is my highest point was in June of 2021 at 695, which was well within good. And I took a real strong nosedive after June of 2021, and things got really bad to get from 695 to 490 in a year and 4 months. So currently I am at 551, which is within fair. And if we go back to last month, we'll see I was at 537. I've gone up to 551. So I've gone up 15, 16 points in a month's time. I'm still 551. I'm still in poor. I haven't even made it into fair at this point. The other thing, as I was writing this down, is these numbers, part of why I was struggling last month is these numbers are so inconsistent. There is a spread of 279 points in the poor section. There's a spread of 89 points in fair, and 69, 59, and 50. So you can hang out in this poor section for 279 points before you move up to the next one. It's kind of one of those things where you're being absolutely punished for being broke, for being poor, for being low income, because you just fight so hard to get out of there. If they had taken, this is a, from 850, from 300 to 850 is a 550 point spread. And if you were to divide that evenly between each category, it's 110 points in each category. But that's not how it is. I mean, it takes you 279 points to get out of poor and only 69 points to get out of very good. So that just is something I noted. Anyway, that is my debt overview for June. A lot of fairly bad news for me, a lot of very frustrating challenges. Obviously, we'll continue to move forward. I knew things were going to be coming in that I was unaware of. These two, this credit card and this collections agency, the fact that two things showed up in that month weren't a surprise for me. I was just so discouraged that I thought I was paid off and ahead here, and I really was not. I have already, like I said, set up payment arrangements for that. That's going to be getting taken care of. And so hopefully my July debt overview will have the U-Haul boxes gone. I do, like I said, have a very strong, definite plan to get those boxes shipped and to get movers helped there. I've already started some of the background work getting that done. And we'll see with some of these other things. This credit card will start to go down, although not by much initially. I believe that's set up for 8 months to get that taken care of. And, July's going to end up being tight. So probably that's all that will get done is the U-Haul boxes. But anyway, that's where that is. Now, I go over at the end of my debt videos, I do go over my crafting portion. For those of you who have been with me, you're familiar with this, and I thank you for sticking along. For those of you who are new, you might not be aware that because this budget is something I find so discouraging so often, as you can hear in my voice this video, I needed to bring something that I found positive into the channel with me, something to look forward to, a reason to continue, that had all positive connotations to that. So I have this craft here, and each month I have something different. And in June was this project, and I'm happy to say this project is now officially done. This was a project that my granddaughter and I went 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and she picked out a heart-shaped pillow form and some fabric. And it took a long time to get that heart-shaped pillow in a way that I was satisfied with. So I have, this is the pillow. You've seen it in the last few videos. This is done. I'm very happy with how that turned out. And then I took the rest of the fabric that was left and turned it into a two-sided blanket, and that is done, and that turned out really well. And then I was going to take some of the scraps and turn those into some doll blankets, and I have done that here. So I have 2 doll blankets that are exactly the same, and they're two-sided to match this particular blanket here. They just don't have that satin lining on them. And then I was going to do the same thing where it's two-sided, exactly the same here, but on one fabric I had a thicker piece than I had on the other fabric, and I was going to be kind of wasting a lot of usable space on this fabric if I cut it as narrow as this other one was. And maybe you get a better visual of that here. So what I ended up doing was cutting the maximum amount I had for both of these and then just folding it in half. And so I have a long skinny one. Again, this is for Barbies and dolls and, you know, little kids playing. This is, so it's fine. So this one is folded in half here and then stitched around the edges. And this one's super wobbly because this is an incredibly stretchy fabric to work with. And then I did the same thing here with this one where it's folded in half on this edge. And this one is not so wobbly. It's a much more stable fleece. And so I have all 4 of those done. And so then here I just have the fabric, the scraps that are left. And this is all that I have left. Again, this is the leftovers of this binding. And I definitely did not have enough to put that on any of these doll blankets. So that may go in the garbage, or it may get set aside to go in with my Crazy Quilt supplies, which is the Crazy Quilt is probably going to come out in July, so we'll go over some of that. And then I just have these weird scrap pieces, and I did kind of consider using some of these corners to make some little pillows to go with this, and I just thought that's getting a little crazy. So I will offer these scraps to the grandkids to see if they want to make some doll clothes out of it, and if they don't want to, then I will go ahead and just toss this. I don't like the idea of throwing this much fabric away, just because fabric, anything to do with the fabric and fashion industry, has so much destructive waste in the planet and with the workers involved who make that. And I just want to be as conscientious as possible and aware as possible, and not just be a throwaway society. So these might get used for doll clothes and they might get tossed. I don't know yet because I haven't given that offer to the grandbabies yet. But I am done 100% with this project. I'm ready to move into July's project. But I do still have a few more of June's videos left to do. So this will just sit in the background. I may talk about a few other things, but it might not get mentioned. I do have my week number 6 check-in spending. I have my paycheck number 3 closeout, and I have my monthly closeout. And then I do want to do a video that really focuses on all of the positive that came from this month. And honestly, I have a very hard time seeing a whole lot of positive that came out of this month. And it's exactly why that video needs to happen. I need to not get bogged down in the immense amount of negative that is happening. I have to be able to look at and find that positive, because some did happen. I have to find it. I have to honor it. I have to acknowledge it. I have to create the positivity for myself in order to continue going on. And I think that it's very easy for us as human beings to get so focused on the negative, and especially in this kind of debt budgeting genre, to get focused on getting out of debt, the bad, the bad, the bad, the bad. It's hard to acknowledge the good, because what's the good? I'm $126 done with my credit card. You know, that was the last I had on that when I started my May. And then I added, you know, $3,000. Where's the positive? We have to focus on the positive. We have to look at how far we've come, because we could be further back, and we're not. We're further ahead. So anyway, that's what's coming. And that's the end of today's video. I want to thank you so much for sticking with me. This has been a long video, and the rest will be much more positive. I believe that wholeheartedly. Thank you so much for sticking along with me. Wherever you're at, whatever it is you're doing today, please have fun. Bye-bye now.